Fort Marion and Beyond is a survey exhibition of Plains ledger art created roughly between 1865 and 1900. The works in this exhibition were all made by Native American warrior artists, some of them known, others anonymous, from various nations across the Great Plains. Collectively, they demonstrate the tradition of so-called ledger art from the 1860s to the reservation period. One aspect that becomes clear in the exhibition is that all of the works share a certain pictorial language, as they are deeply rooted in very old conventions of keeping oral histories in pictographic form. Drawing on the Great Plains was a way of depicting events that were deemed to be of personal or communal significance, and figurative drawing in particular served as an expression of a warrior's accomplishments in battle, and speaks to the status of that individual within a given warrior society. Drawing on paper evolved from earlier painting practices on rock walls, buffalo hides worn as robes, personal shields, and teepee liners. With the establishment of Euro-American trading posts, that earlier tradition was effectively transferred and expanded to the newly available medium of paper. The cheapest source were accounting ledgers, hence the umbrella term ledger art. This led to a flourishing of pictographic art on the Great Plains from the mid-19th century onward. The exhibition is structured around a core group of drawings created by two known warrior artists, Nokkoist or Bear's Heart and Ohettoint of the Cheyenne and Kiowa nations respectively, during their incarceration at Fort Marion in St. Augustine, Florida, between 1875 and 1878. They were taken to Florida alongside 70 other Plains warriors from 5 different nations, having been accused but not tried in court for war crimes during the Red River War. 26 of the prisoners were warrior artists, brought up in the tradition of recording pictographic histories. While they were at the fort, the commander, Captain Richard Henry Pratt, provided them with art supplies. At this time, the U.S. government still conducted violent military campaigns against indigenous communities to force them onto government reservations. Pratt was instead advocating for cultural assimilation, and Fort Marion became a testing ground for these ideas. Pratt allowed the prisoners to venture into St. Augustine and sell their works to residents and tourists. They were allowed to keep the funds generated from these sales, and he also commissioned books of drawings that he used in his own advocacy. The drawings in this exhibition were first given to Bishop Henry Whipple, a fellow reformer doing similar work in Minnesota. Nokkoist and Ohettoint were 25 and 24 years old when they made these drawings. In many ways, their images represent the apex of historical ledger art, not only because of their artistic quality, but also in terms of a creative engagement with new pictorial elements not previously seen. Fort Marion is the first time that drawings were created for distribution outside of the artist's own communities. Landscape is introduced to the long-standing pictorial language. And most importantly, the artists are, for the first time, recording what's directly in front of them, rather than events of the recent or distant past. Nokkoist in particular presents us with complex narrative scenes that depict his lived experiences and observations made at the fort. In this image, we see an aerial view of Fort Marion. The incarcerated warriors are shown patrolling the inner courtyard, having had their hair cut and having been dressed in military uniform. At the forefront, we see Pratt himself. Here, the prisoners are shown sailing around Anastasia Island off the shore of St. Augustine. Once they became proficient in sailing, they would take tourists on turns around the island. The historical importance of these drawings is immense. Pratt went on to found the Carlisle Indian School, and his ideas became the basis for the federal residential school system. These drawings speak to the beginnings of what would turn into a very cruel chapter in American history, and they do so from a first-person point of view. It's important to note how deeply Fort Marion drawings are rooted in the practice of ledger art and in even older conventions of recording the military prowess of particular individuals. Many works in the exhibition feature elaborate depictions of buffalo hunting, specific warrior societies, warrior processions on horseback, diplomatic council meetings, and even rare depictions of courtship. In each instance, the individual protagonists are identified by very specific details of their dress and their accoutrements. What is remarkable about these images is that despite of what Pratt sought to advocate for, they are extraordinary testament to the visual splendor of Plains nations. The artists are capturing the regal composure of their people with a palpable sense of pride.